Okay, we are ready to get started. Hello, everyone. Hello, our viewing audience. This is a Stand to Reason book club happening every 2 weeks with John, with Alan, and with Tim. We are covering, what are we covering here? Oh, yeah, James Sire's book, The Universe Next Door. Somebody have that. There it is. Beautiful. Thank you, Tim. And we are, let's see, this is episode 6. The second to last episode. Woohoo! And we are covering chapter 8 today, which is New Age Spirituality, subtitled Spirituality Without Religion.
AKA don't do drugs.
That's right. We are, well, a couple of us are back from fresh off of a successful reality conference, right? John, you were there. Tim, you were there. Oh wait, no, you weren't there, Tim.
Weren't.
Oh man,
how'd it go?
I thought you worked for Stand to Reason. Like, what's with that? It's our conference. Why weren't you there?
Long story, but I'm under house arrest.
Oh, okay, got it. Oh, you see the new T-shirts?
Oh, I did not see that. Very cool.
It's pretty sweet.
Beware of wolves. See the little sheep.
A sheep and a wolf.
Sheep and a wolf, like sheep's clothing. Cool. Anyways, it's the whole theme about
together in
progressive
one
Christianity
and consciousness.
That's right. That's right. So, okay, we got some interesting things to talk about today. I thought this was an interesting chapter in some sense, partly because it felt like that this whole New Age spirituality has a lot of similarities. I mean, of course, and differences with the previous chapter on Eastern pantheistic monism.
Yeah.
In fact, even Sire seemed to suggest that New Age spirituality is type of a Western type of mysticism, you know? And so obviously I'm sure you guys and probably many people who are watching too have heard the phrase people say to them, yeah, I'm spiritual, but not religious. Mm-hmm. And this kind of goes along with the subtitle of this particular chapter, you know, that people are interested in spirituality. People have a natural yearning towards spirituality, but they don't like the religious part of it, the system, you know, the church, the authority over themselves. And as we go into some of the key tenets of this worldview, we'll see why that's the case, because it stands in stark contrast to a theistic worldview. Yeah. Anyways, I also, relating to this kind of point here, I thought it was interesting. Sire talked about how he said, I don't know if he said this or this is my summary, but I wrote, Westerners can't tolerate full-blown Eastern monism, so they settle for this like mystical naturalism, you know. Mm. But anyways, that's just kind of me rambling with my initial thoughts as to the nature of this chapter. But yeah, let's jump in.
Yeah, they're just kind of rolling off that, Alan. There's and Sire makes this point that the worldview, the New Age worldview, is kind of a mixture of other worldviews. Okay, so you're going to see other worldviews that we've talked about come into play. So you're going to see some of the Eastern pantheistic worldview. You're going to see some of the naturalistic worldview. It's interesting because you almost get like a theism of some kind in some versions. I mean, to me, as I was reading through, what became clear was not all of these New Age teachers teach the same thing. There's kind of different versions of this New Age philosophy. And so, and in many cases, there's inconsistencies within the worldview. So you have, like you said, you have this pantheistic idea where Atman is Brahman. You know, you have this idea that's still like it's all about the self, right? That's the prime reality. We'll probably talk about this more, but that's a connection to the Eastern pantheistic religions. But then you also have like naturalism. You know, it's going to deny a transcendent God. They're going to be relying heavily on the idea of evolution as well.
Can I interrupt real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
So I'd say that it doesn't deny the idea of a transcendent God. It just turns us into the transcendent God.
Well, yeah.
right?
Well, by transcendent, I think you're just saying that the universe is a closed system. So there's no transcendent God, meaning out and over and above the known universe. Right. But you're right. We are the God. We are the cosmic consciousness.
The creator. We get
from. Sorry, it's not transcendent from the universe, like separate from the creation. Mm-hmm. It's one and the same almost.
Yeah, immanent God, right? We're part of the creator.
It's our consciousness that defines the system, right? So our consciousness is the universe.
Yeah.
So in my mind, in a real sense, that you can conflate that with transcendence. No, it's not above it and giving meaning to it, but we are giving meaning to it.
Well, the way Sire is using transcendent as something outside of the universe, mm-hmm. whereas this is making it sound more like monism, where you have the God and the universe are one and the same.
One and the same. Okay.
Yeah. Not transcendent, meaning outside and separate from the universe. So I think that's why.
But I think the transcendent part aside, John makes a really good point that the attributes that start to get ascribed to people are divine attributes, right? So and start to sound a lot like God. So there's and there's other things he points out. There's at least in some forms of naturalism, we looked at kind of an existentialism that puts a value on the individual. That's more akin on New Age. That's more akin to naturalism than the Eastern pantheistic religions, right? Because the Eastern pantheistic religion, well, we're all part of the one, and it's all about there is no individual. You're just and so there's just one. There's just the unity, right? But it seems like New Agers put it more of an emphasis on the individual, and I think that's why Sire he makes this point by saying, okay, on the Eastern pantheistic monism worldview, you get Atman is Brahman, and Brahman's like the main thing,
right?
That's the focus. That's what you're trying to get to. Whereas in the New Age worldview, it's Atman. It's the self. That's the main thing, even though it's part of Brahman, right?
Right.
So there's just a different emphasis. I just thought, man, this is the kind of worldview that just is picking and choosing parts it likes from other worldviews. And to me, just as again, when I'm trying to read through this, I'm trying to be skeptical, but I'm trying to understand where they're coming from, like. What attracts people to this view? And it just my red flags are going up thinking, this just sounds like someone is, picking and choosing. It's kind of like the red flags that go up when I read progressive Christians. Okay. And I see like these people are just choosing whatever they like, they like some things about Christianity, but at the end of the day, this is not a Christian view anymore because it doesn't resemble it And so in the same way, you have like, I'll take some Eastern stuff because that sounds kind of neat, but I don't want to go where it takes me. So I'm going to lean more towards maybe the naturalism side. You know what I'm saying? So that to me is a red flag, and it starts to sound like maybe someone's making this up, This doesn't mean it's not true. It's just kind of an intuition that I start to get out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, John.
You're good, Alan.
I already talked a lot, so I don't know.
I'd rather hear from you than from me.
Well, I was going to relate to what Tim, you were saying. As I've been reading each of these chapters, I try to, as best I can, put myself in the shoes of a person who is an advocate or a believer of the particular worldview, just for the sake of the exercise, Mm-hmm. And when it came to this one, it was up there with one of the hardest of all the worldviews that we've covered so far, where I'm like going, okay, I can't get my mind around this. I can't get my beliefs, in line with it. I can't make sense of reality. It seems so far from everything that we know to be true, intuitively think, feel, whatever, like from every aspect. And I think John Lilly, or Sire quotes John Lilly in page 172, where he talks about how this guy achieved experienced the highest possible state of consciousness. And when he came back from that, he described what that was like. And so I was going to read this. It's just a quick summary here. Yeah. He said, John Lilly writes, we are creating energy, matter, and life at the interface between the void and all known creation. We are facing into the known universe, creating it, filling it. I feel the power of the galaxy pouring through me. I am the creation process itself, incredibly strong, incredibly powerful. I am one of the boys in the engine room pumping creation from the void into the known universe. From the unknown to the known, I am pumping. And I'm like, what? Then he writes, he becomes basically God himself, he later describes, And I'm just like reading this thinking, okay. And then you got to wake up and you go to the bathroom and you got to go to work and struggle to make a living. And, you got to pull the weeds in the yard. And like, how do you reconcile that you have the power of the galaxy flowing through you, that you've created the universe, that you're one with the universe, and yet you're just like everybody else, struggling through life to make ends meet and whatever, I don't know, it's just so hard for me to, even relate and be sympathetic to it,
Do you guys get the feeling though that, like, I mean, there's obviously serious scholars who adhere to this worldview, but for the most part, I feel like it's got a popular level acceptance where some of these questions just aren't asked.
Yeah.
Because I know that, like, if I'm struggling through the world and I tell you, hey, Alan, man, you have the power of the universe running through you right now. You're a creator of the universe. So go and just create, man. Just create. And then on top of it, I'm not making fun of this worldview. You pile on top of it, though, I mean, major psychedelic drug use.
Yeah.
Which is how you reach these more enlightened stages or whatnot. I mean, you've got these scholars, in order to reach this next level, there are these levels here on page 160, where at the bottom, Houston. So Gene Houston is describing the different levels of civilization, and eventually it's type 3 level civilization. She says, we will join the galactic milieu and become the creators of worlds capable of Genesis. And it's just like, I mean, that's insane, but when you're taking, I mean, LSD and all these other hallucinogenic drugs, it becomes a little bit more understandable, I guess, in my mind. And it was really interesting later on. It talks about how there are bad trips, and but with that, one of the things that really stuck out to me is the whole goal is to reach a higher sense of consciousness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yet the way that they're doing it is to alter their state of consciousness with chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really their consciousness it's not a higher consciousness. It's an altered consciousness.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I suppose that's their point, is that's sort of the problem of their worldview. Like, what's the problem with humanity is that we don't realize that we have that capability, and we're stuck in our limited thinking. And in fact, I'm going to show a video clip in a second here, or in a minute, where that point's being made that if left to our own thinking, we can't get in touch with that power, with that recognizing the God consciousness that we have. And that's why LSD or other drugs can help kind of fracture that, mistaken perception we have about ourselves and see ourselves for who we really are. I don't remember Sire really going into that whole, like, the problem of that worldview, like what they perceive to be the problem. You know, like with Christianity, we say it's sin. That's the problem. But I don't recall him going a lot into the details of what the New Ager would say is the problem. But that seems presumed in the worldview that is the problem.
Yeah, well, I mean, their system of ethics is all types of messed up.
I think you're right. I think you're right, Alan, that there's it's not really spelled out the problem is, but I think it's parallel to what's happening with the Eastern pantheistic religion. You're trying to, what the guru is going to help you do is going to come alongside you, and whether it's through meditation or whether it's through some kind of LSD, some kind of drug or whatever, they're going to try to help you reach this next level of consciousness. I think they even they describe kind of two levels. There's the kind of self-consciousness that we all have right now. And then there's this cosmic consciousness. That's the next level. That's kind of the invisible that we're trying to reach. But there's actually, I think there's levels even in the cosmic side. If I remember correctly, they go through those different levels. But John, you began a moment ago talking about kind of how popular this is. I thought it was interesting that Sire spends probably 5 or 6 pages in the beginning walking through, here's these people in the discipline of physics that hold to this worldview. Here's some in biology. Here's some in psychology. Here's some in, and it's like, wow, this kind of new age worldview is got proponents in all different areas of different disciplines. And then of course it goes to, and I'm just waiting for it, Oprah. Because I don't think anyone on the planet has done more to propagate the idea of this new age philosophy than Oprah Winfrey. I mean, I guess some listening today will be like, who's Oprah? You know,
well, it's a popular level version of it.
That's right. And this is the thing. We were talking about, you began by saying, I don't even understand how someone could be attracted to this because I don't get it. It's just so strange. And when you think about it, and that qualifier, I think, is an important one. I don't think people are going deep into this stuff. Now, Oprah's had Deepak Chopra. She promoted The Secret. That was one of her books.
Well, Eckhart Tolle. That was one of, she has devoted so much time to promoting these new age gurus. And when she does that, they become instant bestsellers, right? Eckhart Tolle is a good example. Now, this goes back a number of years ago, but I remember everybody was reading these books. They were making the same kinds of claims that we're reading in here, that you can be as God. Yeah. You are God. I am that I am. They're quoting scripture and they're saying, yeah, that's me. When Yahweh is speaking out of the burning bush, that's something I say. I am that I am. Yeah. And when Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, I am the way. That's how they take it. And Alan, I know you could spend, because this is one of your talks at Reality, right? Was ripping when I was reading through that section in Sire's book where where these New Agers are quoting scripture and making it apply to their philosophy. I just thought, man, these guys need to come to Reality and listen to Alan's talk on never read a Bible verse, because this is like ripping verses out of context. So anyway, I just want to go back. This worldview is crazy popular. But its popularity isn't because people have fully come to grasp what it is. I think it's because there's a lot of influential people who have said, go read this book, here, listen to this guru. I imagine people bought Eckhart Tolle's book. I'm just speculating here, but I think they saw him on Oprah, thought that is awesome. But then they picked up his book and they were confused. They were just like, what is happening here?
Yeah.
Kind of like, one of the most popular physics books out there is A Brief History of Time. Everybody has it. Okay, I got it on my bookshelf right here. But it's like kind of jokingly, people say it's the book that everybody has and no one's read. because, and I actually don't think it's too scientific as far as like going into the weeds. It's understandable, I think, but it's the same kind of idea.
Yeah. So and I think part of the popularity, as you mentioned, is you have these popular people who are promoting it, but then kind of going back to the thing we talked about at the beginning, it includes spirituality, which I would say all of us are inherently created with a natural sort of desire for something greater beyond kind of what we see here in this world. And so it allows someone to be satisfied with that, but it doesn't come with all of the restrictions and the shackles of Christianity or religion and organization and the church and all the Catholic bishops who are controlling you and, blah, blah, blah. Right. So it's got that appeal. Oprah Winfrey certainly is, try to popularize this. And then he talks also a lot about Shirley MacLaine, the actress, who on page 174 makes the bold claim. She goes, I could legitimately say that I created the Statue of Liberty, chocolate chip cookies, the Beatles, terrorism, and the Vietnam War. Because of course she believes in this whole, I am God thing. And in his core commitments, Sire kind of extrapolates this based on MacLaine's point there, that she and we are all kingpins of the cosmos, and one day we're just going to realize that we're, we will achieve cosmic consciousness.
Yeah. So
I pulled up, and I was going to show you guys a video clip of a scene from Shirley MacLaine. It's not a movie. I think it was a series called Out on a Limb. And she's kind of, like you were saying earlier, Tim, talking with one of her gurus, and her guru who's trying to encourage her to, realize, like you were saying, John, you are God. And the problem is you just don't realize it, And so this is just a little 1 minute clip that is well known. Actually, Sire makes reference to the clip. And actually, so have many other people who are critics of the New Age. So let's
do you want us to mute our mics so that it doesn't bounce back, or do you think that'll be a problem?
I don't think it should bounce back. Let's just try it, and if it's a problem, you can mute yourself. But let's go take a look here.
Maybe a little more conviction.
I am God. Look, if I'm God, what does that make you?
Well, we always see in others what we see in ourselves. I am God. I am God.
I am God.
I am God.
I am God. I am God.
I am God.
I am God. I am God. I am God.
Okay.
I'm just expecting a tsunami to come in,
Yeah, it's. Did you guys hear it? Okay.
It was a little low, but I heard it.
Okay.
Well, the whole thing is again, we said it's kind of hard to wrap our minds around it, but to me, it's just, it's Genesis 3. This is what this is the lie that Satan told to Eve. Did God really say? And it's just believing ourselves to be God. So
Right.
We want to be the masters of the universe, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think this goes to this person's point here. He says, seems to me that God would always know who God is. So the fact that we supposedly don't know strongly indicates that we are not God, And I think this points to some of the, what's that?
That's a good point.
Oh, yeah. I think it points to the self-refuting nature of this. Well, if you're God, then why do you need a guide like that guru to help you to realize that you're God? How would God not realize He is God?
Well, He wouldn't.
Yeah,
I mean, by definition. So you got to be playing on a different definition of who God is.
sure. And John, I think you were making this point too. As Susan Morales points out here, is that today's new version of idolatry? People worshiping themselves as God, as gods.
Well, it's not new.
Yeah, right. That's your point. Is that it's very old. People have been doing this for a while,
For eons. Yeah, I remember that when I was reading this chapter, the thing that came to my mind most prominently was G.K. Chesterton. He says, when men don't believe in God, they don't therefore believe in nothing. They then become capable of believing in anything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where my mind kept going. Like, it seems to me like you have to stretch yourself into this belief system. Like, kind of like what we saw in that video that you just showed, Alan. Like, she's finding it difficult to get there, and you've got to really stretch your mind, and hence I think the use of drugs, right? You got to loosen yourself up is the whole.
Yeah.
Well, that's the whole reason why they do it is because you've got to allow or assist your mind to become something other than its natural state in order to actually receive the truth of who we really are. And and that's where I just don't get. It doesn't have anything to do with actual consciousness. I mean, it is a total, like, it's based on it's fabricated. Everything in it is fabricated and forced, it seems like to me.
So maybe we should talk about that experience. Let's say I want to reach cosmic consciousness or God consciousness, or, there's different terms that are used for it. And so I do some kind of, maybe it's a meditation, maybe I take LSD to reach this. Now, okay, so I enter into this this experience, okay? And we got numerous descriptions of from different authors, New Age authors, saying this is what it's like. I saw this light. I experienced these spirit beings. This spirit being helped me to see something. Sometimes it's a negative. So here's my question: you have this experience. How do you know that this experience is like a true experience? Okay, and not look. I have dreams. I had a dream, the other night, and that dream wasn't true. Like, what happened in it was not what happened in reality. Okay, so I'm able to make a distinction between a real, like, an experience I had that was in a dream that wasn't real, and then something that was. What is the criteria? What is the basis on which to make a judgment between experience I have that's true and one that's not?
Well, he answers that, I think, on page 197 or 198 or something like that. I just remember he was talking about the correspondence theory of truth.
Yeah.
He was saying, well, of course they don't buy this because you're making a distinction between illusion and reality.
Yeah.
But there is no distinction, because he says the only test that this worldview must pass when it comes to epistemology, like finding out what you know to be true, is it has to pass a test of experience.
Yeah.
Right. And experience is private. We all have our own private experiences, and that's what legitimizes the reality, is if you have that experience.
Okay. So I wanted you to say that, Alan. I want you to say that, because now I'm thinking. I'm just, again, I'm no expert in the New Age philosophy, but let's consider someone who's schizophrenic or has some kind of mental health issue where they see something that we know is not true. Okay, it's not real. In fact, they go to a therapist, so the therapist can help them work this out. See, so what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to show an inconsistency, because the New Ager knows there are examples of experiences in the world that they would say, no, that's not right. There are people who think that they should have been born without limbs. And so they go to the doctor and they ask the doctor to remove like a healthy arm or a healthy leg. And a good doctor should say, no, that's not right. You know, what about the person who's anorexic and they experience, you know what I'm saying? Their experience is, I am fat when they're 90 pounds. Well, we try to help that person by going to a therapist, a counselor, because the experience is wrong, right? But on this view, you can't say any experience is wrong. Now, here's the kicker. And I want to talk about this with you guys and find out what you think about it. In New Age writing, they talk about experiences. You know, there's this angel that helped me see some kind of truth. But then there are experiences where they're like in hell and there's demons and they don't want to be there. And these spirit beings are, you know, maybe causing torture or whatever. They don't like that. And what they do is, well, that's why you need a guru to help you now.
Right.
But that assumes that experience wasn't true. You know what I'm saying? You had a bad experience. That's not right. You need to have this other experience and we're going to help you. If they're all true, then why would you need a guru to help you not experience that and experience something else? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's because they rely on the term that is used in the book, I think, is conceptual relativism, right? Or conceptual relativism, yeah. And I really like so I mean, I love the fact that Huxley, you know, these bad visions, these terrors, he called bummers. Yeah. Like it's totally, you know, it fits the worldview perfectly. It's a bummer, but like, you know, here it says to avoid regions of inner hell, inner hell, Huxley, Lilly, and Castaneda, as well as many others, strongly urge the presence of a guide during early attempts to experience cosmic consciousness. You know, and then it goes on here and said this, of course, is a blatant contradiction. If seeing is being if seeing is being and imagination is reality, then an experienced hell is simply reality. Or to put it another way, if the self is king, it is in control of creation and can create as it wishes. If one experiences hell, one can destroy it and create heaven. And then I really circled this like 1,000 times. God should need a guide?
Yeah.
You know, and that's actually like the only thing I like really circled and starred in this whole chapter, in combination with this idea of conceptual relativism. Essentially, this is the view that there is a radical disjunction between objective reality, reality as it really is, and perceived reality, the way we understand that reality by virtue of our symbol system. And I mean, it's just all so confusing, the way that they describe this. But there's a disconnect in their worldview, a severe one. But that's acknowledged up front in the chapter. You know, where Sire says that this is a worldview kind of in its adolescence, and it's still trying to figure itself out a ways. So it has to deal with the contradictions eventually. But yeah, I mean, even their proponents say all perception is a kind of symbolic system. There's no direct awareness of reality at all.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the worldview falls apart. But I mean, there's a lot of concerning stuff here. I don't know how much where we are on time. How much? Okay,
about 25 minutes. Yeah.
But I mean, around this stuff like the experiences and then incantations of demons and stuff is just, that stuff's so worrisome to me, and really dangerous.
Yeah. Like that actually. Oh, sorry.
No, go, Alan.
That part was the part that surprised me the most. Like, I guess when I think about it now, like, oh yeah, I guess that makes sense that kind of occult element is a part of it. But for some reason, I didn't, before I read this chapter, didn't associate the occult that much with New Age spirituality. But it was interesting that he talked about this, pages 187 through 189, where he talks about the different sort of versions, and he talked about this occult version, and he
Yeah.
says this is actually the oldest version of New Age spirituality, but not super accepted amongst New Age spirituality advocates. And he talked about animism and witches and warlocks and Ouija boards, and basically this idea that there's this universe next door, and that in order to access that reality, we have to either placate these demons and beings and whatever, or we need to be able to control them to get access to that power. Like, from this fifth dimension. Like, that was the part that I was most surprised to read. I felt like, oh my gosh, I never really put this together, occultism with New Age spirituality. But now that I've read it and understood it this way, it makes sense that it fits into that.
Yeah. During that portion where Sire is talking about the occult version, he quotes Lilly. In my own far-out experiences in the isolation tank with LSD and in my close brushes with death, I've come upon the two guides. So she came upon two guys in an LSD enhanced state or whatever. And then she posits what they might be. They may be entities in other spaces, other universes than our conscious reality. They may be representatives of an esoteric hidden school. They may be members of a civilization 100,000 years or so ahead of ours. They may be a tuning in on two networks of communication of a civilization way beyond ours, which is radiating information throughout the galaxy. And then I wrote right here in big letters, or they're demons.
Right.
And it's just like, and then they actually started talking about it. And that stuff is like really scary. And the way he ended the chapter, I thought was really, really, really good. Bringing in, the biblical concept of, why we don't contact demons and, how God is enough, but we'll get there eventually, I'm sure. But yeah, hey, don't try to contact demons, guys. It's bad.
Through LSD, no less.
Yeah, well, and certainly not through LSD. No wonder why you have a bad trip.
Right?
It's a bummer, as Huxley would call it.
Right.
Don't do that.
Yeah, this got me thinking about, just because I don't agree with it doesn't mean that there's nothing true about what's going on here, right? And so I would want to ask the question, okay, this person experienced something. What was it? Was it just a trip, all going on in here while they're hanging out in their basement, or something on LSD? Or were these people really experiencing something where there was some kind of spiritual entity that was, taking them places or whatever? I'm certainly open to that. Having a supernatural worldview, those are the kind of things that can happen, and that's scary to me.
Yeah.
If that's what's actually going on here, we can laugh about taking drugs and seeing pink elephants or whatever, but when you have these spiritual forces, entities, beings that are involved, this is scary stuff. So you're right, Alan. I was just as surprised as you to read about the occult side of this. Not all New Agers are doing the occult thing, and Sire makes that point here. But certainly it is part of that whole fifth dimension, that cosmic consciousness. There's invisible realities going on, is what his point is, and some of them are these spirit beings. And this is not new. He goes back to Gnosticism and how they had a hierarchy of beings, and it seems like on the New Age worldview, there's this hierarchy. You have to placate some bad ones. You got to woo the good ones with gifts. And at the end of the day, kind of you're responsible for everything that happens in your world, And so this is, by the way, this is what The Secret's all about. This is what Eckhart Tolle, these guys are all teaching. Look, you're the creator at the end of the day. You create the good stuff in your life, and you create the bad stuff in your life. This is the problem I have with Word of Faith teaching. Okay. And I think there's some New Age stuff going on in there, where the power of speech, the power of words, you create these things. And so the problem is you can't take the good without the bad. If you, the quotes in the book make reference to that. Not only are they creating the Eiffel Tower or whatever,
Statue of Liberty.
Statue of Liberty, what she said.
But the Eiffel Tower as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, sure. You're also creating, did she say terrorism?
Terrorism in the Vietnam War.
Yeah, so those are also your responsibility. I don't have shoulders big enough to carry that. Okay, I'm a skinny guy, but I don't want to put terrorism, the Vietnam War, and just all the bloodshed that has ever happened in the universe on my shoulders. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't carry that. But at the end of the day, that's what they're saying. You're responsible for that.
Yeah. This is a total little side point here, but when you guys, John, when you were recently quoting John Lilly and some other people, I just want to commend any of you guys who are watching this and who are interested in a book on worldview. The really amazing thing about Sire is that it isn't just a book about worldviews where he kind of talks about worldviews and just explains them. He goes to the sources and he quotes advocates, like the major advocates, and not just like popular people like Oprah Winfrey or Shirley MacLaine, but substantive, rigorous thinkers who are advocates of this, and gives very generous quotations.
Dude, his footnotes are huge.
The footnotes are like out of control. Like, he's got so much command of the literature on every one of these worldviews. And I mean, this is his 6th edition, so he's really had a chance to really develop it. And so from that perspective, it's really, really good. Like, you get a real good feel of the ideas from the people who are advocating these worldviews. So anyways, it's just a kind of a side comment, but I was just kind of taken by it as I was reading it, this past week. Like, man, he really gives you a good flavor for this stuff, from these people who are advocating it.
So can we talk about morality? Because to me, if I'm shopping for a worldview, I want to find one that can make sense of morality. In particular, what I believe is moral realism, objective morality, that things really are right and wrong. There's moral facts in the universe. And so when I'm looking around at worldviews and evaluating worldviews, if the worldview can't make sense of that, then it's gone. To me, that's not true. Okay. It's not true about the world. And so I was very curious, like you guys. I was reading this chapter, and there was a lot of new content. I was not familiar with some of this. And so it was always like a question would arise in my mind, and I'm like trying to, stop myself from flipping pages, to find out, okay, what is the answer to this? What happens after you die on this world? And so the big question for me was, is there right and wrong? What about morality? And so here's the question: what does this worldview teach about morality?
Yeah, well, I'm looking. Oh, here it is. I couldn't find it. It's page 1. I mean, he didn't say a lot about it, but on page 197 is where he talks about how you have a closed universe. There's an absence of a transcendent God, and then basically, so therefore, ethics becomes impossible. And the reason is, he says, is because the self is the king, right? You are the God. So why worry about ethics, right? If you're the God, then you can't do wrong. And I mean, so that's the most that I recall him talking about. This is page 187, right in the middle there. Yeah. The reason ethical questions receive little attention is clear from the proposition that if the self is king, why worry about ethics? The monarch, the God, can do no wrong.
Yeah, but keep going.
Satisfied, that is sufficient.
Yeah, I determine
the next sentence.
John determines what's right and wrong. So does Alan. We all determine what's right and wrong, right?
Yeah.
But the next sentence there, Alan says, such a conception allows for the grossest of cruelty.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's the most I got out of what his assessment is about the morality of that system.
Yeah. Let go and let be. Be here now. There's simply no place for ethical distinctions.
Yeah, and this is the carryover, I think, from both the naturalist worldview and the pantheistic Eastern worldview. Yeah. Right? If all is one and there are no distinctions at the end, then that means there's no distinction between good and evil. right? And so you have to take that with it. And so on that side of it, there's no morality. There's no, you become your own standard. You determine. And so if I want to do such and such an action, well, the fact that I'm going to do it makes it, I say it's moral, it's moral. That's the end of it. I think in philosophy that's called voluntarism, right? So yeah, to me, that was a huge problem. So your ethics on this worldview, and I think he talked about knowledge as well. And at the end of the day, we've kind of already talked about this. It's the way you know something is through experience. That's how you know.
Yeah.
And I really want you to play this clip from Deepak Chopra.
Yeah, I will.
Because that's going to be a big springboard to this knowledge question, because he seems to know some stuff about Jesus. Deepak Chopra wrote a book. I think he called it The Third Jesus, right?
Right.
And so there's three Jesus. There's the Jesus of history, which he says we know absolutely nothing about. Okay, that's Jesus number one. We don't know anything about that Jesus. Okay, number two is the Jesus that theologians or the early church kind of created. Okay, so they said he's God. They said he did all these miracles. That's the second Jesus. That's the one, by the way, that most Christians believe. Okay,
and what he dismisses completely, by the way.
Yeah, with no evidence. And then finally, he has the guru Jesus, the God consciousness Jesus, kind of a Jesus of his own making. And so we got a clip about this. Maybe we could show that.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. I'll pull this up.
And maybe if you can get the volume a little bit higher on this one. Someone else in the chat said it was hard to hear the last one.
Yeah. I have it turned up as much as possible. So
okay.
What did it sound like to you guys?
I could hear it, but it wasn't loud. It was quite quiet.
Okay. Yeah. So just for the context here, this is Lee Strobel had a like a TV show many years ago. It's called Faith Under Fire or Faith something. Yeah, Under Fire. Anyways, he had many different people on, and this was a conversation that Greg Koukl, our boss, had with Deepak Chopra. And you get a picture. I mean, he's not talking about that particular book, but his ideas about Jesus, as you were just articulating, Tim, are very present in this whole thing. You should probably just watch the whole thing at some point, because we're just going to show a quick 2-minute clip where Chopra doesn't articulate all these views, but some of it comes in here, and then Greg responds, and we'll stop at that point.
For believing what he believes. Before the break, Dr. Chopra, you were talking about your concept of God, and we got into the Jesus issue and a little bit of clarity between the difference of opinion between you and Mr. Koukl. You had said that you carry around the Sermon on the Mount, which Jesus delivered, in which he did some of his teaching. And yet Greg was saying that there are other teachings of Jesus concerning judgment, concerning sin, and so forth, that you don't subscribe to. So how can you kind of pick and choose what you want to take from Jesus and mix it with other people, other people's viewpoints? Doesn't that contradict itself?
The King James version of the Bible is about the 19th iteration. If you go and look at the history of Christianity, Western Christianity began about 313 AD when King Constantine decided to adopt it for political reasons. There are versions of Christianity that are quite different. St. Paul went west and then others went east. And even amongst Christians, there are a wide variety of ideas about what Christ said or did not say. We have no direct evidence of what he said, because the Gospels, even the 4 Gospels, were written long after the death of Christ. And there are other Gospels which we are more familiar with in the East, and we have a tradition of really having reverence for Christ as a messenger of God, but not the only messenger of God. And all I can say is that's the worldview I was brought up with.
Well, that basically all he said is that there are different points of view with regards to Jesus and other religions, which to me is quite obvious. The question is, how do we know the right answer about any of these kinds of things? You go back to the primary source documents that give you the information about those people. Dr. Chopra is just mistaken in his assertion that that we don't have any good record of the life of Jesus. Actually, Lee, you've done tremendous work on this yourself.
There is tremendous, powerful scholarship that demonstrate that the Gospels were written early and not late, that they represent eyewitness reports, and they give us a reasonably accurate view of what Jesus actually said and what he did. And these are the important situations, these are the important details that I'm talking about here. Because people have differences of opinion about it doesn't mean that nobody can possibly know. He said, Dr. Chopra said earlier, who's to say? Well, the answer is the person with the best reasons gets to say. You look at the writings and you see if somebody's accurately represented them. I could take some of the things that Dr. Chopra said today, and I could isolate them and characterize him as a fundamentalist Christian who believes exactly as I do. If I were to do that, he would consider himself ill-abused, and he'd be right. But we think nothing about doing the same thing with Jesus, isolating those things that fit into our worldview and make Jesus into somebody like us rather than letting him be himself. By the way, Christians do this as well. It seems manifestly clear in any record of what Jesus had to say that Jesus wasn't a Hindu mystic. He didn't believe in cosmic consciousness. He was a Jew. He was a monotheist. He was a Jewish rabbi. He held to the Old Testament, and he made some corrections in people's misunderstandings, but his worldview was a Jewish biblical worldview and not a Hindu worldview. And we would be well to read Jesus' statements in light of that if we're going to take him seriously. One of the reasons we quote Jesus, and Dr. Chopra does as well, because Jesus is someone to be contended with. If he is, we should listen to him carefully and be very careful that we get his statements right. Okay.
Could you guys hear that a little bit better or no?
Yeah, it's good.
So, actually, it's hard to get a lot of Chopra all in one section where he's articulating his views. You just have to watch the whole debate to get that. But you saw a little bit of an element there where Chopra's kind of advocating this whole, pick and choose. Well, Greg's responding to him sort of doing this sort of pick and choose thing, which, by the way, Eric mentions here. New Agers grocery shop for spirituality. They never seem to adhere to one major religion because it calls them to something more than they're willing to do. And this is exactly, that's exactly what you'll see Chopra doing in that interview, saying, well, Christ is just a messenger of God. He's just, one sort of person who can lead us to the truth, so on and so forth. But by the way, I'll just also add, Greg does respond in more substance to the whole King James Version is the 19th iteration of the Bible. He also explains how it wasn't, because Chopra talks about how Constantine invented Christianity or this version, in the 4th century and stuff like that. So there's a whole bunch of Greg responding to that more substantively. But was it in this clip, and I'm confused because I watched a whole bunch of this, where Chopra mentioned the other Gospels?
I think so.
Yeah.
Doesn't he mention
he says something like there were other Gospels, and he's referring to the Gospel of Thomas, which of course is a Gnostic expression of not a Gnostic expression of Christianity. It's a Gnostic version or interpretation of Christianity, which that very much fits well within his sort of approach,
Yeah. The Gospels. He kind of throws it out there. There's all these Gospels, and they just pick those 4. These 4 were the early sources, right? This is the 1st century sources. You look at Paul. This is early stuff, right? And so this was not invented by Constantine, 4th century. So it just seems like. But what's interesting is here you have Deepak Chopra, and remember, knowledge on the New Age view, at least as Sire describes, it's more about I believe, therefore it is, or I experience, therefore it is. That's how Sire describes it. And yet, what is Deepak doing in his debate with Coco? What he's doing is he's appealing to what he thinks corresponds with reality, right? He's trying to say, no, Greg, you're wrong. I'm right. Well, there's a problem with that. You're now assuming this thing we call the law of non-contradiction and all these other things, a correspondence view of truth. That's Western, dude. I mean, on his view, that's not Eastern stuff that he touts. When he's sitting next to Oprah Winfrey. So to me, this is another example of an unlivable worldview. When it comes down to it, he wants to argue for the facts. He wants to show he's right, and he appeals to all these things that he says aren't, are just illusions anyways, right?
Yeah.
The law of non-contradiction and so on.
Well, Greg would say he's bumping into reality, right?
Yeah.
And then he has to borrow. They have to borrow from our worldview, or they experience a severe bump.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. But Chopra responds by saying, well, you're saying that this is bumping into reality, but in reality, I'm just being more humble, and uncertainty is a value. And you, Greg Koukl, are super certain and confident you're right. But he's like, I talk about uncertainty and humility, and I'm not sure. And then one of the funniest parts of the whole thing, Greg goes, you've written like 9 books arguing that this is the way reality is,
Yeah.
You've made thousands of dollars, selling books, arguing for your view. And then Chopra corrects him, millions.
Yeah.
or something. Or no, it was thousands of copies, and then Chopra corrects him, no, millions of copies.
Yeah.
But it's like, wait a minute. So you're claiming to be uncertain and unsure and humility, but you're creating all these books articulating what you believe to be, the right path. Even to say you should be uncertain is to presume that being uncertain is the right way to go with something,
Yeah.
Anyway, I feel, I was looking for a clip where where Chopra articulates all of his view, but there isn't anything like that. You have to kind of watch the whole thing. And Greg talks a lot, which, if any of you know Greg,
it's not a long video, the whole thing. It's only like a half-hour conversation.
Yeah, it's only like,
So, I mean, that's from so long ago. You see how young Greg is there?
Yeah.
His hair was like brown.
Oh, look at Lee Strobel.
Look at Lee Strobel. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. This whole worldview, I mean, it really reminded me of pantheism, and again, I just felt like it's unclear, it's incoherent. There's all these tensions there, and what would seem to be flat out contradictions that I really was trying to think like, okay, how can I make sense of this? But I couldn't, and then I don't know, maybe Sire doesn't really go into this, but I kept asking myself, what's the evidence for this worldview that it's correct, that it's true, But again, they wouldn't take that approach. That's not how they'd answer the question.
Yeah.
That's another thing I kept writing in my margins, where evidence ? Because there's no appeal to real evidence in this chapter.
Mm-hmm.
It's all internal, it's all experiential, and that's part of actually the beauty of it. If you're an adherent to New Age spirituality, is that it's all an inner system. So even that is meant to, I think, give you a sense of confidence in your worldview, because nobody can disprove how you feel. And that's true, right? I mean, when I'm talking to my wife about how she feels, I'm not going to tell her, no, you don't feel that way. Like, how you feel is a legitimate thing, but does it line up with, like, when you're talking worldview stuff, does it line up with reality? And that's where what Tim said is so important. I think you have these, I mean, constantly, if you're being intellectually honest with yourself as you're trying to live out New Age spirituality, you're going to be bumping into reality. In some places really, really had, like ethics, for example. For the New Age guru who has his car stolen one night, he's very quickly, I think, going to realize maybe he has to borrow from another worldview,
or he could just create another one.
He could just create another one, which would be like ideal.
Well, you don't have to create another one. You just syncretize your views with some other worldview, which is what they routinely do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they borrow from other systems, other religions, other worldviews, and just syncretize it. So you can just emphasize whatever element you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, there's I mean, we're at the top of the hour, aren't we? There's more that could be said. Yeah. I wondered, I mean, the thing that I was curious about as I'm reading through, and I confess I jumped to the end, was on death. What do they believe? And so are they going to lean towards the naturalism end? Or are they going to lean towards the pantheistic, and that's where they end up going, was kind of this
Yeah.
reincarnation. And actually, when you've reached this God consciousness, you can actually tap into your kind of what you were in former lives. And you have one of the New Age authors was saying, how they were, they were a hero of this other generation. They saved this family or this village, and they were, here's all the different people in one. They were the child, and they were also the father. And it just it was fascinating to read about that.
Yeah.
Who's responsible for that, by the way? So do you create that? You know what I'm saying? Like they didn't talk about karma. They didn't talk about that idea, so you're not going to another life paying for something. And yet you do get this other life. You just continue.
Yeah. I feel like it's something they add on. They need an answer to the question. I mean, it's one of the fundamental questions of reality, our eternal destiny.
Yeah.
So they can't just leave it unanswered. So they like everything else, I do feel like they've borrowed, they've picked and choosed what they wanted, or what's going to be part of their worldview, and they just said, hey, wait, reincarnation, that seems like maybe the least offensive, of the views. We all just get to do it again, which to me sounds awful. But
unless you're having Tim's life, then it's
well,
amazing.
that's true. Hashtag Tim's life.
Tim's life rocks.
Yeah. Unless I was Tim, but compared to the glories that await us in heaven, even Tim's life pales.
I'm curious, did they say that once you are reincarnated and kind of reach this God consciousness, it didn't describe that I can remember, kind of the ultimate state, like you're, like in a pantheistic religion, you become one with Brahman, right? And there becomes no distinction, and you're the drop in the ocean, so to speak, right? Well,
I don't think. I mean, my recollection is that, excuse me, he wasn't so much saying it's reincarnation, other than yes, when you die, it is a passage into the sort of next stage. But basically, you are becoming, you're experiencing the cosmic consciousness at that point. But it didn't sound. I mean, I know it seems like a type of reincarnation, but I think he didn't use that word to describe it, if I recall.
Okay.
But you just said physical death is not the end of self.
Yeah.
But rather, the fear of death is removed because under this death process, you experience cosmic consciousness. And so death is just another transition to another stage of life.
This is the end of this, the whole end of this chapter, I'd say the last maybe 5 pages is worth the read of the whole chapter. I thought the last couple pages were really good.
Yeah, the cracks in the new consciousness part.
Yeah, he at one point he said, and I don't have the context immediately in front of me, but I do, I guess, have it in front of me, but I don't know it. I just put ha 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 because he said pouring a pot of hot tea on their head should produce no particular response. Still, it might be worth a try.
Yeah, that's right.
I just thought he was funny. And then he hit the demon stuff really, really hard.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really important, because I think especially here in the West, where this worldview thrives, he brought it up that this is kind of like a rehashing of like demonic kind of activity where the demonic hasn't maybe been perceivable, at least to Western eyes for many, many, many years. Now this is kind of like it's coming back again.
Uh-huh.
And it's important for us to be, I mean, Paul says that we should live with our eyes wide open, right? The devil prowls around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. And Jesus says that Satan is a liar. So Satan will use his minions to lie to us, to ruin our life. And one way he does that is by, allowing his minions to interfere with our lives in a way that we don't suspect, so we shouldn't be seeking to use demons or our dead Aunt Jean or whoever to get what we want. That's bad. So anyway, it's worth the read.
Yeah. Well, it's a good point to end on. Don't do demons. Don't do drugs.
Yeah, no drugs, no demons. They both begin with D. It's easy to remember.
That's right. Wasn't it the Nancy Reagan thing? Just say no. Was that
Just say no?
That Nancy Reagan's no to drugs policy? Anyways, just say no.
I'm Canadian, Alan. Just a reminder. I'm here.
What's that?
I'm here in Canada. Who's Nancy Reagan?
Oh, okay.
Oh,
yeah,
come on, you guys pay more attention to American politics than Americans.
True.
Yeah. And as this guy says here, or this gal, I don't know, don't do Oprah either.
That's the message. That's the message to leave on.
Good way to close. Thank you for
Though, if Oprah wanted me to go on her show, I would.
Yeah, but that's not doing Oprah. That's you. That's doing John on Oprah's show. That's fine. We can do a dose of John.
But it's not Oprah.
Yeah, it's not Oprah. All right. Anyways, we are done and overtime. Next week we are going to be, I'm sorry, not next week. We're going to be back in 2 weeks. That'll be December 3rd for episode 7, which will be our last episode. And we will be talking about the firm foundation of postmodernism. It's a joke. It's not firm at all. But anyways.
Firmly planted in midair.
Right. Feet firmly planted in midair, as Greg Kokel's book on relativism is subtitled. So, if you're reading along, or if you're following along, read chapter 9, and we'll be discussing our thoughts on that chapter in 2 weeks, December 3rd, for our last episode. It'll be so sad to end, but
it's going to be sad to end.
All good things must come to an end, right?
Except for heaven. Yeah,
I meant all of things in this world, but yes. Okay. John always pulling the Jesus thing out of everything. Yeah. We appreciate it, John. All right. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Take care. Thanks for joining us, for those of you who did live. Bye.